It is the summer holidays, and that means I have more time to read, but also I have time to go to book events. Welcome to another vlog. Welcome back, or if you are new here, welcome. My name is Katrina and I make bookish content here on this channel every week, and then book to movie or movie reviews here at the weekend. In the description box below you will find all of my social links, including my blog and my Goodreads, where I review most of the things that I read. I definitely have a review of some of the books that are going to be featured in the vlog here today. But yes, because it is the summer, it means I have been out and about. I think in the first 2 weeks of my summer holidays I ended up going to 9 book events. Which is pretty impressive, but I thought that I would bring you along. Anything that I was allowed to film, I filmed for you, and give you a taste of some of the book events that I attended. Some of the books might be interesting to you, some of the things that the authors have to say might be interested to you, and I did attend Harrogate International Crime Festival for the first time, or Theakston's International Crime Festival for the first time. Given the fact that I am from Harrogate, that's a little bit sad, but I have had very good excuses for why I haven't been in the past. For example, last year I was quarantining, having just moved back to the UK, so that's a very good excuse not to go. Wasn't legally allowed to. And so I've got some footage of that for you, some pictures and some video, and then footage of other ones I've been to. All of the books mentioned in the video will be linked in the description box below, and please do let me know in comments what you think of this vlog format and whether you would like to see something like this again from me in the future. But without further ado, enjoy.
But I have to get into the zone and like really be thinking about the book. And then if I'm thinking about, oh quick, I've just got to shoot 3 frames for like a brand, I'm like, oh, I've gone. So I never feel like I have enough time for the books. And then what we do is we just clear the diary for like 2 weeks, or in January when I take it offline, that's a full month, writing month. And then what happens is, as it gets more and more intense, I just end up writing a lot in the evenings and just squeezing it in.
So Love and Other Human Errors is about love. I wanted to write about love because for a start I wanted to write something with less death and more dialogue. That's how I pitched my new book. I found after writing Last One at the Party and then the ensuing pandemic that followed, that had absolutely nothing to do with my book, by the way, I did not pause it. I cannot change the future. I wanted to write something a little bit more light-hearted. I'd wanted to write about love for a long while. I feel like love is something which we're all brought up to believe is very simple and uncomplicated. Your eyes meet across the room and you see the person that you're going to fall in love with, and you fall in love with them, and that's it.
The Disney prince.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not for most of us the case. And also, once the kind of, once that first kiss has happened and normally the credits roll, that's kind of the beginning for most relationships. So Love and Other Human Errors is basically about all different types of love that we have in our life. The love for our friends, the love for our family, the love for our lovers. It's about the complicated chaos that ensues when you fall in love and when you allow love into your life. And it's about one woman whose life has been ruled by maths and theory and absolutes, and how her life changes when she allows love and all its chaos to come into it. As I say, it's like when you meet people as an author and they go, oh, that's going to end up in your book, innit? And you're going to write about that, and you think, I'm really not. And no one's going to buy that. So it is that there is that kind of thing of, I think you pull from, there's quite a few people here who know me, and yeah, sure, you're all in there in some aspect, but pick the nice bits, and that's you. How's that?
Good answer.
So I'd like to have a special place, but unfortunately, we live in, a house with 2 kids, and during lockdown I wrote wherever they weren't. So before I started writing full time, I used to write whenever I could, and so that would be, kind of like evenings, weekends, like bless him, Pete used to take the kids to go and visit the in-laws so that I could, you know, really get those done. I'm quite lucky, I write very quickly, so I can, if I did a full day, like 9 to 5, I could probably do 5,000 words, because I'm just like, when I started writing Love and Other Human Errors, I got loads of different coloured sticky notes. Because when I wrote last one at the party, it was just like whenever, wherever, whatever I could. And I thought, no, I'm going to be disciplined this time. So I got loads of different coloured sticky notes, and I plastered our kitchen wall with them. And I wrote the entire timeline. I wrote what everyone was feeling. I wrote what they were doing, where they were going, how it fit in with everything else. It took me about a month, but I was like, I've got a plan. This is great. It's going to be so easy to write it. And I looked at it, and I took a photo of it, and I was like really pleased. And I went off, and I didn't look at it again for 6 months. I just completely unfortunately, I am not a planner. I'll have a rough idea, and I'll write kind of like, you know, a synopsis, or I'll write kind of like a chapter breakdown, but then my characters often lead me off in different places. So, you know, with Love and Other Human Errors, there was another lead character who got completely dumped. You know, there were kind of like different scenarios that just disappeared. Frank Cottrell Boyce says, slap your first draft down, and I very much slap my first draft down. Just write it, go for it, make notes about what you need to change, and then I edit. I do a big edit afterwards, and I'll maybe rewrite 20,000 words of it.
If you can kind of picture this beautiful, beautiful lake with 3 mountain ranges around it, and on this particular day, which was New Year's Day, I was standing by the lake, and the water was kind of like glass. You could sort of see your face reflected in it. There were little shards of ice around the edges, and we were all waiting to go in for our New Year's Day swim. And this is something which I started a few years before then. When I started it, there were about 8 of us, 5 of whom were my family. And then now there are more than 100 people who come on New Year's Day to swim in this particular lake with the mountains looking over. And the mist was kind of rising from the water, which probably has some technical term that I don't know, but it's really, really spectacular. And everyone around me, as we're waiting to go in, we're kind of waiting for the horn to sound, and everyone's going, that's so beautiful, so spectacular, it's magical. I wasn't thinking any of those things. What I was thinking was, what if a body floated now? What would happen? You know, what would you do? What would people's reaction be? As a riot commander, public order commander, which is a kind of weird job. It's a sort of, a lot of it's really boring. A lot of it's sitting at a desk and planning events. So, you know, big demonstrations, protests coming into Oxford. You're at Oxford, aren't you? Were you protesting? Would I have arrested you, perhaps? No. So I'm planning these events, or, you know, big football matches, those sorts of things, working out how many resources we would need. And then the other bit of the job is completely different, and that would be on the day itself, where I would be at the football ground, standing on a little raised bit of the ground, having bottles thrown at me, really, and generally being in the middle of a riot, which actually, as it turned out, was really good practice for having children. So I was doing this, and I was working really long hours, you know, working 60, 70-hour weeks, and loving it. I mean, I loved my job so much. In fact, I loved it so much that when I left the police, it felt like a bereavement, and I struggled so much with walking away from it that I cut myself off completely. I handed in my job phone. I told my colleagues I would give them my personal number, and then I just walked away because I couldn't bear to have that connection with this career that I'd loved so much and wanted so badly to continue in. But the reason I left was I had an appraisal. I left because of an appraisal. I was preparing for the Chief Inspector rank, and part of that process was to do something called a 360-degree feedback process, which involves all the people you work with at different levels, your boss, your peers, your team, filling out an anonymous form about you and saying what you're like to work with. And so my colleagues all did this, and then it gets wrapped up in a report and given to you. And I read this report. It's quite a brutal process, you know, it's like walking into the canteen naked. I read this report and it was really, really good. Really, really good. It talked about how I was really energetic, and my door was always open, and I listened to people, and I was creative, and I was optimistic and positive, and all the good adjectives. And I took it home because I was really smug about it, and I showed my husband like this. And he read it and he said, "Yeah, this is great. Who's this woman?" He didn't.
Sections, you'll understand why. I think that's, yeah.
We are going to come back to that. Although we spoke about the Glass Talents before Sea of Tranquility had come out, and so we did our event, and then I was reading Sea of Tranquility, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so
But you know what, for real, my feeling, what I say to interviewers every time this comes up is, if you're not asking me insane questions, then you have nothing to worry about. Like really, like it's not going to show up in the next book. So no pressure, Anna.
Well, now the temptation is now to ask something so insane that it does end up.
Okay, yeah, so there's this book. So context is important. Sea of Tranquility was written in New York City in 2020, where we were all insane, frankly. And that was a bad year everywhere, and New York was quite intense. It moves from Vancouver Island in 1912 to a lunar colony in the 25th century. There is a time traveler in it, a time traveling detective, and moon colonies. And it's hard to sit up here and say it's about the nature of reality, because that sounds insanely pretentious, but that is the situation actually. It is a bit about the nature of reality and about what persists through time. And yeah, I think does that feel like a fair summary?
I think so.
Yeah, you know, I mentioned how much I love David Mitchell's work.
Yeah.
This will not be a surprise to anyone who's read both books, but Cloud Atlas is one of my very favorite novels. And I see the structure of Sea of Tranquility as being very much an homage to that book. I always loved the Cloud Atlas structure. It has this symmetrical march forward and then backward in time. I tried to do that with the Glass Hotel. It was a disaster. My editorial notes on the Glass Hotel were essentially, could you please change everything? And the structure was one of those things. So I rewrote the Glass Hotel 3 times and ended up with a completely different structure. But I felt like the structure could work in a time travel novel. Because the challenge with the structure is that if you're obligated to return to the same time point and the same point of view in a very precise order, it's hard to maintain narrative momentum. But you can cheat that if your protagonist is a time traveler and he's moving forward in his arc as you move back in time. This will make sense when you read the book, I swear. So yeah, that was a way that I could use that structure and make it work. And I did have to plan it much better, because you're right, time travel fiction gets crazy.
Yeah.
And so autofiction, which for anybody unfamiliar, that's shorthand for autobiographical fiction, which I think of honestly is fiction that's just slightly more obviously based on the life of an author. Because you know this as a writer, of course you draw from your own life. To make your work feel real. Yeah. So I was working on these little fragments about the experiences of an author on a long book tour, and then the pandemic hit. And I decided to write a time travel novel. I was trying to figure out what the timelines were going to be. And I thought, oh, would it be kind of interesting to use those little book tour fragments in a futuristic sci-fi section? So she's off on tour and then she's going home to the moon. So yeah, that section is the strangest hybrid of genres, I have to say, where it's auto-fictional in the sense that, I keep a journal, so I had verbatim records of a lot of conversations over the years, because you write down the shocking conversations in your journal, let's face it. So all of the interactions that Olive has in the book are completely autobiographical.
Right.
Right up until the time traveler, who, as far as I know, unless you're a time traveler, Anna, like I don't think I've met one yet. So it's a lot of absolutely verbatim conversations that I actually had. People actually said those things. But at the same time, she does go home to a moon colony, so it's also sci-fi.
Thank you so much for watching. I will be back with another video for you very soon, so make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell, and I will see you next time.